It gives me great pleasure to introduce, in fact, he probably doesn't need any introduction because he gave our very first Zoom talk 2 years ago, and then he did another one last year. He said, would you like to ask me to do another one? And this one is in person and on Zoom. And Chris Foster is an ex-Bobby, to be based along the road at Holborn Police Station. So he has a very extensive knowledge of this area from south of the Euston Road. And this time he will be talking about his heroes on the beat in Holborn. And the area he will be covering will be to the west and north of Holborn Tube Station. He's going to be starting with the tram tunnel and finishing up at 7 Dials, but I'd better not say any more, otherwise it will ruin any surprises he might have. So I will hand over to Chris now. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's lovely to see you all in person, having braved the elements this evening, and a warm welcome to everybody on Zoom at home. Hopefully you're in the nice and warm. And as it's the Christmas special, you've got a glass of wine and a mince pie next to you. We here in the library haven't got that luxury this evening, but hopefully a bit later on. So here we are. I'm delighted to be here in person. I did the first one on Zoom a couple of years ago, and that was when we had a wander around the back streets of King's Cross, all the Dickensian alleyways and the back roads there. Last year, we did a tour around Hatton Garden, and that was quite interesting. And I think you were one of the first people to hear that one. And tonight is the very first talk about my latest walk in and around the West End. So let's now lose all the script. So it's all pictures from now on. And what we're going to be doing, we're going to be walking the beat where I used to walk the beat, and I'm going to take you on as if you were on a guided walk this evening. And there'll be a little bit of history. So I'm tempting fate. So I'm talking to all the Camden historians here. So I hope I've got my facts right. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with my stories and memories from back in the day. And we're going to meet some of my heroes. Some historical heroes and modern day ones. But this walk is really in memory of one man who's inspired me to do it, and his name is Fred Wilkinson. Now, Fred was a colleague of mine at Holborn Police Station in the 1970s and 1980s, and he was a special sergeant. So he did policing for love. He was known in the trade as a hobby bobby. A lovely man, and he was a bit older than me, or a fair bit older than me, and he had time for me, and we became friends. It's only in recent life that I've really got to know him again, and I'm delighted that Fred's daughter Jo, sitting over in the corner there, it reintroduced me to Fred, and we had some fascinating afternoons together, sort of reliving the past. And from the stories that Fred told me, he's inspired me to get this walk and this presentation done. So Fred celebrated his 100th birthday in last January. Sadly passed away in the summer. But Jo, this walk is for Fred, your dad. So there we go. So let's start off now, and we're going to open the curtains. And this strange-looking chap here with a beard and moustache. This was me 50-odd years ago. So, and as you can see, I've nearly got the jet black hair, but that's gone. So if you compare it with that picture, that's me on a good day. So I don't know if you can see any likeness there, but just to show that I wasn't too old to be a bobby on the beat. I started off at 19, the age of 19, a tender age, when I went to Holborn Police Station for the first time. So you did 13 weeks at Hendon Training School, and then you come out, you get in a coach. You've got no idea what police station you're going to end up at until they drop you off right outside the police station. So that was my baptism of Holborn. So we're going to walk the beat tonight, and we're going to go in this little area of central London, a tiny area. It's not very far, but it will probably take us about an hour to get from one end to the other. Let's zoom in a bit on that. And that's the area we're going to cover. But that's not a very good map, is it? So I was trying to find a decent map, and I have found the perfect map, courtesy of Camden History Society, the very back page of the Streets of St Giles. What a fabulous book that is. And thank you, Camden History Society, for giving me permission to publish this map, and it will be popping up as we go through our walk this evening. So we're going to start on the top right, near Holborn Tube Station, which is always crowded. There's always people out there. So Holborn Tube Station, or should it be Holborn Tube Station? No. Holborn, because of the hollow Bourne down by the River Fleet. Well, that was last year's chat when we realised for all these years I've been saying Holborn. I've been mispronouncing it. So we'll try and get it right this evening. So on the other side of the road, we got Sainsbury's and the corner of Kingsway and High Holborn, and there we are looking west. We're looking west along High Holborn, and in the distance is New Oxford Street, and then it'll go on into Oxford Street itself. But here is Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's is going to play a little part in tonight's presentation. But that's what it looked like at the end of the 1800s. So London County Council decided in its wisdom to build this 100 feet wide main road, getting rid of all the back alleys and little streets along the way. And the new road was to, it was to link the ever expanding North London with the main roads of Fleet Street and the Strand. And they called it Kingsway in honour of King Edward VII, who opened Kingsway in 1905. But underneath the road, we got the sewers. And next to the sewers, we have this unique feature. We have the tram tunnel, the Kingsway tram tunnel, which starts off at the Southampton Road and Theobald Road and goes right underneath Kingsway and coming out into the embankment. And from a charge of 1 halfpenny, an old penny, a princely sum, you could catch a tram and go right through the tunnel. And you never had to wait long because there was a tram coming every minute. I'm going to harp on about the tram tunnel for a special reason, which I will come on to in a minute. So how's this for a building site? At the Aldwych, looking north, and they're building the tram tunnel there. And I think what I love about this picture is it's a major roadworks going on. There's not a traffic cone or a temporary traffic light in sight. They've got away with it. And I think that's how it should be. Too much of that going on there. So in 1906, the first tram tunnels started, and there's one coming out of the room, and you can see on the side of the tunnel there, the soot and the muck from the streets. It's much cleaner now, and a later photograph will illustrate that. And these new trams, they were electric for the first time ever. We had electric trams. Because up till then, 40 years earlier, trams were introduced to the UK by an eccentric American, and he invented horse-drawn carriages to run on rails. And you can see the rails here now, and they're still there. You can still see the rails going down the ramp. But this eccentric American, who was he? His name was George Francis Train. What a great name for T-R-A-I, Train. Now he's going to be one of my Holborn's heroes to invent something like that, and especially he does bear a very striking resemblance to one Tudor Allen, if you look closely. But I think the real Tudor is far better looking. There we are. Right, we move on. So why am I telling you, why have I got this fixation about this tram tunnel? Well, it goes back to my grandfather. I think he's one of my Holborn's heroes. So my grandfather, after the First World War, he'd been on the Western Front. He got injured, and he was ready to get into sort of real life again. he'd lost an eye in battle in the First World War. He couldn't sit down, so he needed a standing up job. And he found that the tram trains, you stood up if you were driving tram trains. And he said, "This is a job for me." And he got the job as a tram driver on the 33 tram, which went all the way from Manor House to West Norwood. And he loved it. And it went right through this very tunnel that we're looking at now. And then when he retired, he got free travel on the buses. And so Saturday afternoon, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, he'd take me and we got the first bus and we went all over London. And I think this is how I've got my love of London from my grandfather. And my grandfather would have come out in his tram at an embankment where he would have met a man with a red flag, and you can see him standing there. And this is another shot of him in there. Now, he looks a bit of a fearsome man, doesn't he? And I think you wouldn't want to argue with this chap. And there's something strange happened. In 1931, the trams were so popular that they dug the tunnel deeper and made them double-deck trams. And you can see two number 33 trams clanking their way through. I think with one tram every minute, there must have been some huge noise going on. This is a map of London, the tram map of London, which is it's a bit like a spider's web. But when you can see on the west of London, there's not many trams. And when you start thinking about why there's not many trams, well, it's really, the nice posh residents in Kensington and Chelsea. They didn't want trams full of common people turning up on their doorstep. So as you can see, no trams. Strange, isn't it? Right, okay, earlier this summer, I got the chance of a lifetime. There's a thing called the London Tours run by London Transport. And part of that, there was a trip down to the tram tunnel. Cost £45, and that's a concession rate. That is, if you're younger, you'd have to pay more. And my wife said, "Do you really want to spend £45? Go down the ramp, look into the tunnel, and come out again." And I said, "Yeah, this is going to be magic." So off we went, and so this is standing at the bottom of the ramp, and you can see how much cleaner it is now. But you can see the running rails of the trams. And you can see how steep it is as well. Now we're going into the tunnel for the first time, and that is Holborn tram station. Just at the end of the when it starts to level off. Now I've put a picture of 1931 and my picture next to it, and you can see very little has changed. Obviously they've taken up the tracks there, but you can see how narrow the platform is. Now, if you look right in the distance of those two photographs, you can see a set of steps. And those set of steps went right up to street level. And that was the way you got in and out of the tram tunnel. So if you put those two back together and see how it was, you can see it was a little bit risky when you're standing there in the middle. I wouldn't like that to happen now with all the traffic about. But you can see there, looking down Kingsway, there's plenty of traffic around in those days. So a bit of a risky business getting off the tram. This was our guide who took us there and back, and the tour was meant to last an hour, but I got so infatuated with what was going on. It went on for ages, and but she was lovely. But she told me that in 1952 they stopped the trams. So that was ages ago, 52, 70 years ago. And trolley buses and petrol buses, they were starting, and they took the place of the trams. But she also told me that in 1978, and I can remember this, that in 1978 there was the firefighters' strike, and so when there was a fire, the firemen, they couldn't go out and deal with the fire, so they sent the army in, and they had green fire engines. Can you remember the green fire? They were called green goddesses. And they couldn't park the green goddesses at the fire stations because that would have meant crossing the picket line. So where did they store them? They put them all down in the tram tunnel. So they all came backwards and forwards whenever there was a fire. So we're now out in the fresh air again now. The two other little aspects about this tram tunnel. So pre-1984, the Greater London Council had the tram tunnel as its headquarters for the flood centre. So before 1984, when the Thames Barrier was built, this was where they controlled any floods that was going on. Now just imagine that. They've got the flood control centre down underneath the ground. So again, a bit of a risky business, but I think there was a bit higher ground there. But the lovely thing is that there are now plans to redevelop Holborn Tube Station, make it sort of fit for the new century and everything. And what they want to try and do is use some of that old tram tunnel as part of the entrances and things. So the tram tunnel may live on. Right, so on the other side of Southampton Road, the junction of Bloomsbury Way, we have this magnificent building, Victoria House. And that was built in the 1920s and it was the UK headquarters for the Liverpool Victoria Friendly Society, and it took 6 years to build. Massive building, it's beautiful. And building started at either end, so they started at one end and then a few years later they met in the middle. And it's been said that the office workers, right in the early days, they had to use ladders to get to their offices to sort of climb through the building site and everything. Now you just imagine that, using a ladder to get to your office. So you've got your rolled up umbrella in one hand, you've got the briefcase in your other hand, you've got a cup of coffee somewhere else, trying to get to your place of work. I mean, that must have been a real sight. Okay, so we're now looking at this corner building on the other side of the road there. Can anyone remember what used to be there? Lloyd's Bank. Who said Lloyd's Bank? Oh, spot on. The Lloyd's customer. Okay, so this has got special significance for me because I've got a photograph here of how it used to be. So they closed in the sort of late 1980s and it's now gone, like so many other banks that are around. And I think this was my first bank because when I arrived in 1970 at Holborn Police Station, the first things they said in the clerk's office, they said, right, how are we going to pay you? We're not going to pay you pounds, shillings and pence. We're going to put money in your bank account. What's your bank account? I haven't got one. He said, well, go out the front door and find a bank and get a bank account. So this was the first bank I saw, just up at the junction. I went in there, I actually spoke to the bank manager. Can you remember bank managers? And he sat me down, he said, right, I'm going to do you with a checkbook. And then, and when you want money, you said, right, okay, what you do, you get the checkbook, write cash, and write, I only take out about £30 a month because that will keep you going, £30 a month, crikey. And sign your name, hand the check over, and you got the money. Fantastic. You remember that? Yeah. But the bank was only open from 9 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And so if you were too late to go to the bank, you missed out on your money. So those hours were a little bit crucial. So my bank manager, he looked after me. I think he's one of my Holborn's heroes. And there's a sign in there in the branch. The branch is now closed, like so many banks in the late 1980s, gone. So there we are. Cheques and credit cards. So Barclay card still lives on, but in the early 1970s, there was a thing called Access. Do you remember Access cards, anyone? Okay, so Access cards were from Lloyd's and NetWest. And Access's head office was in New Oxford Street, just down the road. And the postman delivered bundles of cheques because if you wanted to pay off your credit card bill, you wrote a cheque, everything else in those days. And one day the postman said, well, I'm just going to spirit away this sack of mail and just see how many cheques there are. And there were hundreds of cheques. And he said, right, okay, so how can I fraudulently use the, so he said, I know what I'm going to change my name by deed poll to Access. And he did. And so he paid all these cheques into his own account and he got very rich. And he would have got away with it if he hadn't been so greedy, but he got arrested in the end. But yeah, one of the earliest examples of credit card fraud. I love that story. Right, we move on. Our next stop, Sicilian Avenue, a grade 2 listed pedestrian diagonal walkway through from Southampton Road to Bloomsbury Way. Sicilian Avenue conjuring up the flavours and the taste and the smells and the warmth of Sicily. I think the only thing that's got anything connection with there is the architecture and the spaghetti house at the end there. The shops are now sadly going a bit, but as you can see, there's beautiful architecture there, and it was there in 1906 when London was really sort of blossoming, this little area of London. And the architecture is just lovely. This is a more recent photograph, and sadly a lot of other shops have gone, but there's still people above. But the tower at the end, the turret there, I mean, that reminds me of the children's fairy tale of Rapunzel up in the castle there. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. Now, why am I in this photograph here? Well, there's a story, as you would expect. So we're mid-1970s now. And when you're working night duty, because you work all around the clock, during the night there was a prolific nighttime climbing burglar in the area, and it was everywhere. And he got up onto the rooftop, broke into the offices and houses and things, and stole things. Now, where I was standing there, the block is a freestanding block. And they were doing it up. It was completely covered in scaffolding, so it would have been easy for our climbing burglar. And at 3 o'clock one morning, we got the call: suspect seen on the roof of this block here, the freestanding block. So we rushed out, we surrounded the building, we got him, he's on the roof, right, he's not going to go anywhere, we're going to arrest him. I said, right, let's call the key holder. So you're calling the key holder at 3 o'clock in the morning, surprise, surprise, no reply. So we're like, oh dear, right, okay, let's phone the fire brigade. Let the fire brigade get there. No, the fire brigade are out sort of fighting fires and things, there's no spare ladders. So we said, right, so the duty officer says, right, okay, I need one of you to climb up scaffolding and arrest the burglar. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And so I have not got a pretty good head for heights. So I got, you can see where my head is, and above that there's like a bit sticking out. It's a cornice. Those are with architecture brilliance, is that what you call it? Anyway, I got up as far as that, and I made the mistake of looking down, and I froze. And I thought, I couldn't go up, I couldn't go down. So my mate Keith, who's another of my heroes here, he's like Spider-Man, you climb up anything. So he rushed back to the area car, which is like the emergency patrol car, and he got out what's called a seek and search, a really great big heavy battery operated torch. And he strapped that to his shoulder, no problem at all, straight up the scaffolding, got up to the top, disappeared. And a minute later, he appeared. He said, yeah, I've got the suspect. He's hiding behind the chimney. You see the chimneys in red at the top there. He said, right, okay, but the suspect refused to come down. And so he had to stay there. And we all stayed there all night long until the office staff got to work the next day. And then we got it. But he put his hands up to 100 burglaries. So it was well worth doing. And I nearly caught him. But my sad head for heights, that failed me on that occasion. So on the corner of Southampton Road, just on Sicilian Avenue, there's this lovely use for an old red telephone box. This lovely South Korean man who serves the best coffee in London. Sadly, when I passed recently, he's not there anymore. But I think he could just be a summer man. Let's hope he comes back here. Returning to Holborn Tube Station, top right-hand corner. And oh, look, the sun's shining. A nice, clear, crisp day. How about that? And there we are on the other side of the road, Sainsbury's again. But this building here, quite a famous building. This was from 1874 to 1955. It was the famous Holborn restaurant. You think that lovely prime spot right opposite the underground station there. And this building's got an incredible history. And I'm really grateful for this publication here. Well, the Camden History Reviews are something else. When they come through my letterbox, my world stops. And my wife gets nothing out of me until I've read from cover to cover. The reviews and newsletters are just amazing. So I'm so grateful for Camden History Society for inspiring me to do all this. And there's a man called Steve Job, and I hope he's listening tonight, who's one of the regular contributors. And Steve wrote a 10-page piece in this very review, 43. And it's all about the Holborn restaurant. And I started reading it. Oh, this is amazing. We had a holiday book to Mallorca. This went with me. That's why the publication's looking a bit dog-eared. And every spare minute I was reading it, I'm thinking away, how can I introduce the Holborn restaurant into one of my guided walks and presentations? So the first time you're hearing it from me. And this restaurant only really came about because it was a swimming pool. It was the first public-sized swimming pool on this very site in 1839. And this was it. This was the work of a man called James Hedgeman. And he was responsible for trying to keep people fit and active in those days. I think he's another of my Holborn's heroes. And look at this lovely, it's an Olympic-sized pool. It's T-shaped, 5 foot deep. And it's sort of filled with nice warm water up to 29 degrees, pumped from a deep borehole below. But they charged you a shilling to get into the swimming pool. Now, shilling was a bit steep in those days, you know, a bit steep now, really. But yeah, just for swimming a cold bath afterwards. And it's interesting to look at this illustration here because when you're reading it, when you're reading the piece, it was men only there, and they swam au naturel. But when you look in the front of this picture here, and there's 2 ladies in the water, and they're swimming as well. So there's a little bit of is it one way or is it another, or is it just a publicity stunt to get more custom? Anyway, the swimming pool only lasted 4 years due to high running costs, and eventually in 1874 it became the Holborn restaurant. And they kept expanding it because it was so successful, and the meals were cheap and plentiful and very good value, and everybody enjoyed it. And it expanded up to 2,500 diners in one go, 500 members of staff. Wow, just think of that lot. And the early days of BBC radio in the 1920s, the programmes began with music from the Holborn restaurant. Free advertising or what? And it was really popular. The Wall Street crash, 1929, followed by the 1930s, a bit of depression, decline in fortunes, things were going on, World War II, food rationing, the Blitz, bombing, and the West End was starting to expand. And really the Holborn restaurant wasn't really part of the West End. And so it was starting to disintegrate a little bit. And the Spectator, the lovely magazine in 1955, it published a lovely lament from one John Betjeman. And I quote his lament, the lovely quote coming up. This is the last day for having a meal in the Holborn restaurant. Some of the most splendid and impressive rooms in London. And what a pleasure it is to walk after a glass of port from the longest and most impressive list of port from any public eating place. How about that? So there we are, the demise of the Holborn restaurant. Still, at least we've got a Sainsbury's there now. So that's one iconic building going west, and we are now going to go west on our way along High Holborn. We're just going to go on a little way, and we're going to stop at this building here, this cream and brown building. 133 High Holborn, which until recently was a large branch of Nationwide. Not there anymore. That's also gone. When you look at the front entrance there, it's now some sort of cafe. I don't know how good your eyesight is, but it's no longer Nationwide House. It's now Hogarth House, and the number on the door is changed from 133 to 136 High Holborn. They've totally changed the location. What chance has the postman got? My goodness me. So another of my Holborn's heroes, a man called Charles Pearson. He was a City of London solicitor. Back in the 1830s, he proposed the idea of an underground railway to ease the congestion above ground. Do you think that'll catch on? And there used to be an underground station here, and here it is. The same, well, not the same building, but a former building. British Museum Station, opened in 1900 by the Central London Railway, now the Central Line, that closed in 1933. But it was the first underground trains on the Central Line to go electric, known as the Twopenny Tube. For 2 old pennies, you can go up and down as long as you like. 6 years later, Holborn Underground Station with the Piccadilly line was built, 2 separate companies, and that was just down the road 100 yards away, and because that had the added attraction of the tram tunnel, the tram station there. So that closed down, and as part of the modernisation then, they put in escalators, those lovely 2 big escalators, and now here we are another 100 years later, they're going to change it again, all being well. Opposite, we have the old magnificent Holborn Town Hall, which started off life as just a corner plot. So if you look on the left-hand side of that picture, that was a library, built as a library in the late 1880s. And how look at lovely the sort of the ornate doors and the brickwork there. I mean, how lovely it is. A public library above the door there. So that's how it's become when it's extended, and it was Holborn Town Hall in 1906. The building next to it I'm going to concentrate on, because here's our next story. So we're sort of moving along High Holborn just a little bit to this building here, the large brown modern building, Pearson's College and Pearson's Business School, offering high-tech courses there now. This is the same picture from the other side of the road, and up until 1973, this was part of Oddham's Press, and it was quite a sort of shabby post-war sort of plain office block building, mainly magazines, and they were printed there, and they specialise in women's magazines with such alluring titles as Woman, and still going strong now, Woman. So that's what it was doing back in the day. So let's now concentrate on this doorway here, because this is a vital part of the next story, which I remember the day well, Friday, the 10th of August, 1973. I was on late turn duty, so I paraded at Holborn Police Station at 2 o'clock. And as we were doing the parade, we were told that the reports are coming up. There was a fire in these old premises there. And could I just go down there, just assess what's going on, help the fire brigade put the fire out, and any pedestrians, get them on the other side of the road, stop the traffic if necessary, all that sort of thing. So I went down there, and I saw black smoke coming out of the building, and pedestrians were standing on the wrong side of the road, getting across the other side of the road. It was getting very hot. We stopped the traffic. The fire brigade, the firefighters, they couldn't get in the front, so they had to go around to Stookley Street in the back and go in through the back door and everything. I was standing there wondering what to do next, thinking, is this building in a collapse? Do we need to move the pedestrians back further? And then through the black smoke, I could see the firemen at the front of the building, and they seemed to be trying to get out, and they were trying to push the door, this door here, and I was saying, no, it opens from the outside, it goes in. But with all the noise and the smoke and everything, I just couldn't get my message across. And I think, what am I going to do? I've got all these firemen inside. I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I've got a big pair of size 11 boots. I can give the door a good kick to see if the door opens, and if that works, and make sure everything's okay. So I took a big run jump, leap, crashed into the door flew open, the firemen ran out the door, and helped put the fire out, and we all went on our merry way. Come the next day, the Saturday, again I was on late turn. Everyone was talking about me and said, "Yeah, you're in the Sun newspaper." I said, "What? You're in the Sun? Your photograph is in the Sun?" And I thought, well, the only photographs in the Sun at that era was inappropriate pictures on page 3. I said, he said, "Yeah, look, you're gonna." So I went out and bought myself a copy of the Sun, and it was so. This newspaper has been in my loft for over 50 years, and for the first time, the public, you guys, are going to see it for the first time. So those of you with a nervous disposition, look away now, because this is the picture. The very cool. right in the, and you can see right next door, yeah, to the left of my head, there is the town hall. Where they got my name from, I do not know. And that started a bit of inquiry with the fire service, saying, "Well, we were in the building. You know, I don't know what he was doing, kicking the door down." But there was me flying through the air with wearing a horrible, scratchy nylon shirt. So you're the very first people to see this picture for over 50 years. So there we are. Right, let's move on. Let's go somewhere quieter. Let's go down Drury Lane. So we're at the top of Drury Lane, we're looking south. We're now looking a little bit further down. So where are we going to? We are going to the very first Sainsbury's store, 173 Drury Lane, where they only sold eggs, milk and butter in those days. So the Sainsbury's family aim was to sell the best butter in London. And I remember in the 1950s when I lived in Muswell Hill, there was a Sainsbury's there, and you queued up for all your bits. And they had these giant butter pats and things, and they're just patting the butter all shaped and things. So yeah, the best butter in London. And surprise, surprise, Sainsbury's got very popular. And later they sold what was called railway fresh milk, coming from trains from Devon, from Dorset, East Anglia. Really popular. And this tiny shop, it just wasn't big enough. So they opened up another shop on the other side of the road. 1958, they moved across the road, and this was a self-service shop. Think about that, going into a self-service shop. Do you think that'll catch on? I should say so. Were they the forerunners? Just down the road, we have the New London Theatre on the junction of Parker Street, now named the Julian Lim Theatre, 4 years ago, in memory of the legendary West End choreographer, Julian Lim. So our next story is just further along. Well, it includes the theatre, and I don't know if you can see the cement mixer just further up the road. Next to the cement mixer, there is a public house, the Sun Public House. This is the Sunday night. The pubs were just closing down, so it's after 10:30, closing in those days. Call came up, and the area car responded, an emergency call from the licensee of the Sun. Who was driving the area car? My mate Keith, Spider-Man. He gets everywhere, that man. He said that the publican wants police presence because there's a very agitated man, a Mr. Cooper. So okay, so we went through the door, spoke to the licensee, and he got face to face with Mr. Cooper. Tommy Cooper himself. Tommy Cooper, the magician, who was one of my favourite comedy magicians. And he was doing a one-night show at the New London Theatre, and it finished at 10:25. He looked at his watch, he said, "Oh, I can run across the road and get a couple of pints down me before the pub shut." And that's exactly what happened. And he was enjoying his pub, enjoying his pints, and he said, "Right, okay, I need to nip back to the theatre to get my magic kit, because tomorrow night is another performance at another theatre, and to get it all back in the car again, and off we go." He got back to the theatre was shut. Everybody locked down for the night, and all his magic stuff was still in the middle of the theatre. He got a bit agitated. He went back to the pub where his wife was. He said, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And he was getting more and more perplexed and agitated, and that's when the licensee called police to see if we could help. But it was no way of calming him down. His wife was trying to calm him down, and in the end, Keith managed to get hold of the chauffeur and the car, and then bundled Tommy into the car with his poor wife, and off they went, still having this row. The story moves on 2 weeks, and then there's an ITV series called Happy Families in 2 weeks, and blow me, Tommy Cooper and his wife were on the show Happy Families. So there we are. Right, okay, we're now back into High Holborn again. So we're just north of High Holborn, so it's the bottom end of Museum Street. Now, back in the day, back in the early 1970s, parking cars in central London wasn't really a problem. All you needed to find was a space in a side street and stick your car there, no problem at all. Unfortunately, there was a really popular make of car in those days called a Ford Cortina. I don't know if there are any Ford Cortina owners in those days. They were very easy to break into, and thieves could steal a Cortina in 5 seconds. They could break into it and get away. So not the great sort of security. And there was a bit of an outbreak of Ford Cortinas being nicked all over the place and stuff stolen from them. So that's the subplot of the story. But this story also involves nurses. So in this area, there are loads of nurses, and some of you might have remembered my stories before about coppers and nurses getting together. And I think nurses, they're all my Holborn heroes as well. Fantastic job that the nurses do. But this one particular nurse, she worked at the Middlesex Hospital, this lovely building, sadly no longer got. That's in Mortimer Street, an extension of Good Street. And the nurses' home was round the corner in Foley Street, the little street off Cleveland Street, so just on the edge of the city of Westminster there. That's the front door of the nurses' home. So the story is that we had our policeman who was in love with a nurse, but he couldn't visit the nurses' home and see her because men, especially policemen, were banned from the nurses' home. And the policeman lived in what's called a section house for unmarried policemen. And women, especially nurses, were banned from the section house. So something had to give. And then this nurse said, look, I'm going to be moving out of my nurses' home and I'm going to get my own flat. So my mate said, yeah, an opportunity here. So he said, and she said, look, I need a bit of help. Have you got a vehicle so we can help with all the stuff? And he said, no, I don't drive. Yeah, in those days, we didn't earn enough to own a car. You know, we had bicycles, no good for all our stuff. And so how are we going to get a vehicle? How are we going to get a vehicle? He said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to speak to the detective inspector to see if we can borrow the observation van. But tell him we're going to be looking for the villain responsible for nicking all the Ford Cortinas. So the observation van, it was just like this. It was like a forerunner of an old Ford Transit. It was an old beaten up Bedford van, but it had little spy holes in so you could see what's going on. And this was perfect for getting all the nurses' stuff in and taking it to her flat. And then, yeah, right, this is going to work really well. And he managed to convince the detective inspector that he was going to be doing observations looking for the car theft. So very quickly, they moved all the stuff from the nurse's home into her flat. And there's still enough time to actually get down to sort of look at go along the top end of home and stop there and look for any car thieves. So they parked the Bedford van up. It was very similar to this. And they were just about to get into the back of the van and start observations. And then suddenly the door started rattling. There's someone outside trying to break in to the police observation van. And so they ran out and arrested this man. And the detective inspector was really pleased. And so everybody was a winner on that story. Fantastic. Right, we moved down High Holborn a little now. There's another story coming up here. The Shaftesbury Theatre. What a lovely theatre this is. Described as the largest independent theatre in the West End, presenting high quality, large scale productions for over a century. Absolutely spot on. Because it started off in Boxing Day 1911 with the production of The Three Musketeers. And this theatre carried on through the Blitz, World War II. Dame Margot Fontaine, she was the international ballet star. And during the Blitz, there was an air raid warning, but she just carried on and as if nothing had happened, and the audience stayed there. I mean, what a brave lady, and she is a true Holborn hero. And just on the right, the theatre, there's a little street called Grape Street there. And that's what it is. So this is the basis of the next story. And the story goes that one of the technicians was, there was a Saturday performance, a matinee and an evening, and he parked his car in Grape Street at the back, a Ford Cortina, and he parked his car there, he left his sandwiches in the car. He went to do the matinee, came out at the end of the matinee to get his sandwiches, and his car had been stolen. And he was just about curtain up for the evening performance. He couldn't go to Holborn police station to report the car theft. So I was sent to the Shaftesbury Theatre to report the crime. And so through the stage door there, and what was showing at that time? Hair. Does anyone remember hair? So to mark the end of theatre censorship in 1968, the revolutionary sort of musical Hair, it opened at this very theatre, and it played for over 5 years, just about to celebrate its 2000th performance on this very theatre, when the ceiling fell down and they had to close the theatre. But that's what was on, and I hadn't seen Hair. I didn't really know. I was too poor to go to the theatre in those days. So there was me. I was standing backstage reporting the crime. What colour was the car? Anything of value in it, and all the rest of it. And the show was going on, and those who might remember the show, they were getting near the end of the first half. They built up a big crescendo at the end of the first half of the entire cast are on stage belting out the final number. And they went on stage wearing these sort of very shapeless sort of smock type things. And at a given signal, they let go the drawstring, and the smocks sort of fell to the floor, leaving the whole cast standing there stark naked. And that was the end of the first half. And they were allowed to do that because it was the end of censorship now. It's totally unbeknownst to me, and I'm trying to report the crime with all these people. And it was the end of the first half. The curtain shut, and all the stage lights came on and everything. And the entire cast, they all ran past me and stark naked. And I was trying to write this report, but they were more interested in looking at me because they're like, well, look, there's a policeman here. I was like, what is going on? So yeah, my memories. It's only backstage there was only really small, and just a strange experience. But every time I pass the Shaftesbury Theatre, I just remember that story. So we now move into Endell Street. So we're moving just a little way west. We're at the top end of Endell Street, and we'll be looking south now. And this is halfway down on the left-hand side at Dudley Court. And there's a plaque on the wall in Dudley Court, which is just about there. And if we stand opposite, it's just about there. And this plaque on the wall tells an incredible story. So two amazing women who have definitely become my Holborn's heroes from reading about them, Dr. Flora Murray and Dr. Louisa Garrett Anderson. And they established the Endell Street Military Hospital here on the former workhouse that was there. 573 beds, the only British Army hospital to be staffed entirely by women. And more than 24,000 soldiers, British soldiers, were treated there. Absolutely unbelievable. And there they are, both suffragettes. They set up the Women's Hospital Corps to provide medical help to wounded soldiers. But the British establishments up the war, they didn't want them. They said, no, we don't want you. So they went over to Paris and started the hospital there. And the War Office was shamed into action a couple of years later to say, "I'll come back. We'll have you." So this was it, 1915. It all started off in this old workhouse. There's a chap standing there. I don't think too much is going to go past him. Look at it. I reckon he's the same chap who's waving the red flag. They installed lifts, electricity, modern cooking equipment. Many of the wounded soldiers, they required immediate surgery. Up to 30 men were operated on every day, staffed entirely by all these amazing women. And the two doctors, they still found time to give weekly lectures to their staff on women's rights. Fantastic. Both awarded the OBE to Buckingham Palace for their amazing work. A lovely story there. Right, okay, at the end of Endell Street, we have Shorts Gardens. We're going to go along Shorts Gardens now, and we're going to cross the junction here with Neal Street. So we're going to be in this area here. So we're creeping towards the end of our walk now. But the building on the right-hand side there, that's always amazed me, because there's a water clock, 40 years old, this water clock, by two aquatic horologists. How about that for a word? Tim Hunkin and Andy Plant. And Andy Plant, that's a lovely name, because it resembles a garden, these. So let's now go face onto it. Sadly, the clock's no longer working, but it's but the bits and pieces are still there. And it's all worked by gravity. There's a big tank at the top on the roof, and it's on the hour, it sort of gets to capacity and starts flowing down, throwing down various pipes and ringing bells and things, and gets to the ledge, that blue ledge along the top where these figures are. And that sort of rises a bit, and you've got these pretend flowers growing, and it fills up the watering cans, and you see these figures watering the plants and making it all look lovely. And the little figure on the left-hand side, the little girl, she's got a watering can, and she turns around, pours water all over the pedestrians watching, and everybody laughs. You can find a lovely clip on YouTube, and it's well worth looking at it, because we did try and get hold of Andy Plant to say, and Tim Hunkin to say, let's now try and get this working again. And sadly, it hasn't happened yet, but who knows, one day. But this building, before it had this paint, 1976, it was Neal's Yard Whole Food Warehouse. And my wife and I were living in a small flat then. They're sort of only recently married, and money was really tight. And we were trying to live healthily and cheaply as possible. We stumbled across this place, and it sold, great big bags of wholemeal flour, nuts, peanut butter, dried fruit, muesli, much cheaper than the supermarkets. So we visited this place. My wife had the order. She went in to get the order. I was outside with the car, parking on the yellow line, perilous business. And the traffic wardens in those days. Do you remember the traffic with the caps, with the yellow bands on, called the yellow perils? Nobody was safe from them. So I was on guard, making sure that the yellow perils weren't going to stick.
Like a sort of.
Right. Okay. Little bit of interference on the line. Okay. So that's Neal's Yard. Let's now go into Neal's Yard. This tiny little place. And that's what it looked like in the early 1970s, a sort of bit derelict, bit rat infested. But me being a young policeman on night duty, perfect for me, so I could sort of sit there on an upturned barrow, because there were barrows there from Covent Garden Market. It's like a sort of storage place. And I could get my flask out of my pocket and my sandwiches, and have a sit down for a couple of minutes and still be on my beat. So that worked. But look at it now. That's the same shot, just in the summer. They're just incredible. Always packed, always crowded, Neal's Yard. Who would have thought, from being a dump in the 1970s to what it is now? And this is it from the other side, the flowers and everything. But there's a blue plaque. Let's have a look at this blue plaque. Monty Python lived here. Monty Python's Flying Circus, one of my favourite TV comedy shows, late 60s, early 70s. So all down to dear old Michael Palin, who's still going strong, and his mate Terry Gilliam. They bought these offices in 1976, and for 11 years they turned those offices into studios for the hilarious Python films. Incredible there. Right, and now for something completely different. The other end of Neal's Yard, we're now in Monmouth Street. So we're just about there, coming down the Seven Dials. But first, on the other side of the road, we have the Covent Garden Hotel, this lovely building, a red brick building here. And I don't know how well it's going to come out on the screen here, but if you can read the words, 1890, it was the French hospital opened. And I quote, "It was for the benefit of distressed foreigners of all nations requiring medical relief." I reckon it could still be come in handy now, because these same today's distressed foreigners, when they see their hotel bill, what the hotel charge is, I reckon that they're in need of the French hospital too. But lovely building. We carry on south down Monmouth Street, and we come face to face with Seven Dials. I love the fact that on the top of the column there are 6 sundials, because the original streets, there were 6 streets. And then they built the column, added in a 7th street, and the column had already been made. So it was there, but yeah, it's 6 columns. But it was laid out by a man called Thomas Neal. I think he's going to be one of my Holborn's heroes too. An MP, a master of the Royal Mint in the 1600s. It was his idea. This lovely aerial shot here. So his idea was to maximise the frontage of houses for rent, because back in those days, if you got rent along the front of a house, you could be charged more rent, and that's how it all ended up. It's like this lovely sort of Union Jack style area here. And at one stage there was the 7 apexes there. There was a pub, and it said that the cellars of all these pubs were adjoining. So if you got a criminal who's on the run from police, he could dive down in one pub in the cellar and come out somewhere else. It's a bit like a rabbit warren. But it was a bit of a den of iniquity. So Thomas Neal hoped that Styles would be the place for posh people, but it didn't happen. It deteriorated. And the mid-1800s required sort of 39 night watchmen every night to try and keep the peace. Turned into a nookery. Sorry, a rookery, not nookery. Nookery. Mob violence, the lot. And what did the street paving commissioners do? They said, right, okay, all these ne'er-do-wells, they're congregating around the base of the column. Let's do away with the column and we might have a problem. It didn't work. So this area here is without its column. But not really much change in the early 1970s. It was still a bit of a grim and quite a tasty area. And then when Covent Garden Market moved to 9 Elms, things started to get a little bit better, because 7 Dials, this area here, became a conservation area. And a quarter of the buildings have since been listed. So things are going on, and it was quite timely, really, because there were plans to demolish the whole lot and start again. And they put this new sundial here. And I reckon Thomas Neal, if you're looking down there, I reckon he's got his wish, because it's a lovely area to relax, and it's done up and it's beautiful now. But we're going to continue our journey south, Upper St Martin's Lane. But before we do that, we're just going to look at this sundial clock. So this is how to work out what time it is on the sun. A bit complicated. I think you need a degree in applied physics to work this one out. And it sits on the corner of a pub called the Crown, the last remaining pub on one of the corners there. It's still there to work out how to tell the time. I think it'd be better off asking. I don't know. We continue on our journey. So then along the street, we're going to go into Upper St Martin's Lane. But first, we're going to pass a ghost sign on the left-hand side. How I love a good ghost sign. And this one's a classic one, isn't it? I think every ghost sign tells a story here. So this goes back to 1847, this sign here. And you see that there was a saddler and a harness maker there. You can sort of just about picture it. You can even buy a second-hand one there if you're lucky. So there we are. It's still, the signage is still there. Now in Upper St Martin's Lane, and you can see from the street sign on the left-hand side, we're now in the city of Westminster. We've gone off our beat, and we've gone off the map as well. We're at the right bottom of the corner. So we're right down in the south for our last stop. Oh look, there's major roadworks again, and this time we've got the cones, we've got the temporary traffic lights. It's all there. And so we're going to go into Great Newport Street. So just to get your bearings, so Upper St Martin's Lane is off on the left-hand side. You can't really see it off left. You've got Longacre, Garrick Street right in front of you, and then St Martin's Lane itself is up to the right-hand side. So that's Great Newport Street, sort of looking down it. I want you to feast your eyes on the black building just at the end of the roadworks. You see where it says Arts, just to the right of that plain sort of black building. So that's a more close-up shot there, and you can see there's a blue plaque and that's dedicated to Joshua Reynolds, no less, who lived there in the 1700s. But our final story is in 1949, and this was a bomb site. It formerly, the building belonged to the publishing house of Sir Isaac Pitman and Sons Limited. But on the right-hand side of the door frame, someone had banged in a huge, rusty old nail, big nail. And they used it as a hook for the policeman's capes, because you can't do traffic patrol duty wearing a cape because it goes all over the place. And so this rusty nail was used as like a peg for hanging your cape. Really good. And it's just about in this little area here. Well, it was anyway. So 1949. There was a policeman doing traffic patrol duty, and he went back to retrieve his cape, but there was a very smart man with a bowler hat, and he got hold of this cape and he was looking at it, and he thought, he's going to run off with my cape. And so he approached him, and this smart man, he said, oh, I'm a surveyor, I'm doing an inspection of the premises for my client, Sir Isaac Pitman. And they said they're thinking of rebuilding it after the war and making it a posh building again. But he wanted to know whose authority was it to bang on the wall. He said, look, that nail is going to have to go. You're going to have to find somewhere else to put your cape. Well, the policeman was a bit of a wily chap, and he said, look, this nail here, this is property of the Metropolitan Police. And it's been put there on authority from the Metropolitan Police Commissioner and backed up by the Chief Magistrate at Bow Street's Magistrates Court. And he said, if you were to unlawfully remove this nail, you would have to be put in front of the Commissioner of the Police and be weighed off by the Magistrate at the court. And before you take any action, sir, you'd be very wise to talk to these people to see what you did, what you're planning to do. End of story. Nothing else was heard about until 10 years later, Pitman's building had been rebuilt, and on the right end of the door frame, the nail, and there's now a very ornate scroll-like hook made out of metal, once painted gold, and across, look, enamel at the top there, Metropolitan Police. And you've got to go there. The Christmas lights, you go and see the Christmas lights, but do this first. You go and see the Metropolitan Police coat hook, because that is where it is. I think my final hope and heroes, the entire Metropolitan Police Service. There is the hook, and thank you and good night. One hour, it's not bad.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Chris, for quite a.
You've been scribbling away, haven't you?
Yes, not a lot, but because it makes quite a lot of the things I'm, quite familiar to me, because I did do some of the research for Streets of St Giles around that area.
Yeah, fantastic.
Quite complicated, working out a good route to take in all those streets without having little odds and ends left out. Anyway, would anyone in our live audience like to ask a question or make a comment? Anybody? Hello, oh, Mike.
I wonder how the 33 got to West Norwood.
That's a really good question. I think it must have gone through. I'm guessing.
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Right. The 33 tram. Where is its route? Okay, I think from Manor House down to Holborn. I think it must have gone through the Angel and that way. But I'm sure some people will put. Right. Once it's gone through the embankment, it must have gone over Waterloo Bridge, I would have thought, or Westminster Bridge, I thought. Down to the Elephant, yes, and through Brixton and on its way through Streatham and Norwood. The original M3, I would say.
Gone in the tunnel. How does it get back up again?
So it goes through the. It comes.
Waterloo Bridge.
So it's gone through the tunnel. So it comes out of the embankment just by Waterloo Bridge. and does a right turn.
Wouldn't it have used the tunnel that goes, the one that the buses now and lots of...
What, the northbound truck?
Yes,
Yeah, okay, so that's a later addition, and that's like a shortcut to go underneath the, that's northbound traffic only.
Was that not originally one of the tunnels?
Part of it was. Yeah.
Yes, so that would have come out on Waterloo Bridge.
Did
it not?
It went onto the embankment and it went across one of the other bridges.
Oh, I see.
I thought Waterloo first, but it didn't go across.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
Right,
sorry.
I think on the embankment.
yeah, it goes along the, so it comes out of the tunnel under the bridge, and the tram rails do a right, where the man with the red flag is, and it goes along the embankment over Westminster Bridge, and then joins up with the A23 that way.
A very long route.
Huge,
I mean,
huge
thinking
route.
about bus routes these days, you know, they're quite short.
68 bus route, is it?
68.
Partly
Yes.
59 possibly these days. I don't
That's
know.
the West End.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, the 68.
In those days, a lot of bus routes, went from the northern suburbs or east to west, and now not many do. Most of them stop in central London because of the amount of traffic. And there used to be coaches also from Hertfordshire to Kent.
Yes.
Green Line.
There's a very knowledgeable gentleman for the benefit of the people on Zoom who's telling us that back in the day, the bus routes went from North London to South London or east to west. A bit like the Elizabeth line now does. Yeah, so it goes all the way through. Yeah, good stuff.
Anybody else in our live audience, or is there anybody on? Nobody's asked a question on Zoom at all. Nothing at all.
Is anybody on Zoom?
How many have we got? Oh, so somebody saying something. So how many have we got?
So I will be doing this walk for real. So anyone's fit and active, so there's my email. Just come.
Sorry, yes.
So pop me an email. I'll tell you when I'm next doing this walk, and we'll do it. We'll do it for real one day. Yeah.
Do we have the of the tour guides here today this evening? There's 1, 2.
Joe taught me everything I know. So.
Oh right. Well, that's lovely to.
I see one.
Oh, we've got something now, Catherine.
Let's see if we can.
Yes.
Did you want to ask your question, David? Did you have a question?
I just wanted to say about the number of participants on Zoom. It's currently at 19, but it peaked to near the beginning at 30.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's pretty good, isn't
Yes,
it? Yeah,
yes.
that's lovely.
So,
well done, everybody who's still on Zoom.
well done us for turning up, which is anyway,
the
on
brave,
such a
brave people,
cold evening, and to you as well.
The live
Chris.
audience. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening.
So shall we wrap it up now?
I think so, yeah.
And thank you once again for a fantastic
pleasure. Yeah.
And hope to see you maybe on one of your walks.
One of my walks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So everybody, round of applause.